Every night, as your body sinks into sleep, something extraordinary begins. Your breath slows, your muscles relax, and your mind drifts into what science calls the REM stage. But what they don't fully explain, what they can't explain with electrodes and graphs, is that in this moment, your consciousness slips through the cracks of physical perception and begins to move. Where it goes depends on one thing: vibration. And this is the part they've hidden, not just from textbooks, but from your entire culture. You've been taught to believe that dreams are random firings in a resting brain, leftovers from the day, useless imagery. But ancient knowledge, especially the teachings of Thoth, tells a different story entirely. Dreams are not noise, they're records. They're snapshots of the places your consciousness visits when your physical senses go offline. And when you begin to remember them, not just the content, but the feeling behind them, you realize something earth-shattering. Not all dreams are dreams. Some are memories. Many of the visions you've had weren't imagined. They were real experiences occurring in the astral plane, a dimension layered over this one, vibrating at a different frequency. This isn't fantasy. It's been observed, recorded, and even scientifically explored. Think of the work of the Monroe Institute, where subjects repeatedly reported out-of-body experiences, consciously traveling beyond their physical forms. Or Dr. Charles Thoth's research on altered states of consciousness, where dreamers reported encounters and environments that were too structured, too detailed, too real to be dismissed as fiction. And yet the world around you continues to mock the very idea. Why? Because if you accept that your consciousness can move beyond your body, if you truly embrace that you are not bound by this physical shell, then you become very hard to control. The rules no longer apply in the same way. You stop playing small. You stop living in fear, because you start to realize that death isn't the end, that time isn't linear, that communication doesn't require words. In the astral, you can meet others, spirits, ancestors, even the living, without ever speaking a sentence. You can walk through cities made of sound, or symbols, or geometry. You can stand before teachers who do not speak in language but in waves of meaning that hit you like truth directly injected into your being. But none of this is possible if you keep treating your dreams like illusions. They're not. They're messages. And sometimes, they're warnings. Ever had a dream that came true? That showed you something days, weeks, even months before it happened? That wasn't a coincidence. That was your consciousness, tapping into the non-linear field of time, where past, present, and future all exist simultaneously, and the soul can navigate across them like moving through rooms in a house. Some dreams are symbolic. Yes, they come cloaked in metaphor, not to confuse you, but to speak to your deeper mind, the part that understands the language of the soul. Others are more direct. You find yourself in a place that feels more real than waking life. The colors are more vivid, the sounds more textured, the emotions more intense. That's when you've crossed the threshold. That's when you've slipped into the astral. This realm is layered. There are higher dimensions, full of clarity, light, and wisdom. And there are lower ones, dense and chaotic, shaped by fear and unresolved pain. Where you go isn't random. It's determined by what you carry inside. If you fall asleep stressed, bitter, angry, you may find yourself in places that reflect that energy. But if you fall asleep with intention, with clarity, with curiosity, the doors you walk through begin to change. Thoth taught that the astral is a school, a mirror, and a proving ground. And whether you remember it or not, you've already been attending its lessons. The question is, are you ready to wake up to the truth of your travels? Because the next time you say, "I had the strangest dream last night," pause, reflect. You might not be remembering nonsense. You might be remembering where you went. Where your consciousness travels at night isn't determined by chance. It's shaped by what you hold within. Every emotion, every fear, every longing becomes the compass. The astral plane doesn't judge. but it reflects. It bends and morphs to match your inner landscape, almost like a spiritual mirror held up to your unconscious self. And the deeper truth? Most people never realize they've been navigating these realms for years, mapping out dimensions that resonate with their hidden states of being. You could visit the most radiant, crystalline spaces full of luminous beings and deep insight. Or you might wander through grey cities, strange fog-filled rooms, or spaces that feel emotionally heavy, densely packed with confusion or static. These aren't dreams built from randomness. These are destinations, and they're not assigned to you. They're attracted to you. The astral responds to your frequency. It welcomes you into the rooms you've already built with your thoughts and emotional patterns. Fear takes you to places where fear reigns. Anxiety anchors you to slower, murkier zones. But peace, love, gratitude, these open the gates to dimensions that hum with clarity and healing. This is why ancient teachings, from Thoth to Tibetan mystics, always emphasize purification of the mind and spirit before sleep, not for religious ritual, but for navigation. Because where your consciousness lands determines what it learns, who it meets, and what it brings back. In the ancient temples of Egypt, initiates were taught to prepare themselves before rest. Specific chants, oils, and mental preparations weren't superstition. They were tools for tuning the self, so that astral journeys could serve higher purposes. The Temple of Sleep wasn't a myth. It was a practice. Thoth's teachings, etched in the emerald tablets, point to this, that mastery of sleep leads to mastery of realms beyond the physical. And through that mastery, we evolve. When you become aware of this process, even a simple bedtime routine becomes sacred. Your final thoughts before sleep aren't throwaways. They're the ignition key. What you think about in the moments before your body lets go becomes the setting for your journey. That's why so many spiritual teachers talk about intention as a superpower, because it is. Intention doesn't just direct dreams, it acts like coordinates. Set it properly, and your consciousness follows. You can ask for healing. You can ask for insight. You can even ask to meet specific guides or enter particular planes of learning. And often, when the request is clear and the vibration matches, the experience follows. Some have described waking from dreams with information they couldn't have known, languages they don't speak, or answers to questions they hadn't even consciously formed. This is the memory of the astral surfacing through the veil. It's fragile, easily lost in the morning fog, but it's real. And the more you pay attention, the stronger that thread becomes. But this is also where it gets challenging, because just as beautiful realms exist, so do darker ones. These aren't evil, they're denser, built from unresolved energy, trauma, fear. If you've ever had a nightmare that felt too real, that left a residue for hours or days afterward, you've likely passed through one of these zones. Not to be punished, but to be made aware. They're calls to resolve, to release, to transmute. Thoth warned of these realms, not to scare, but to prepare. He taught that the astral isn't just a place of comfort, it's a proving ground, a place where your inner world is externalized, exaggerated, and placed before you, not to torment you, but to give you the raw material needed to evolve. It's one thing to read a truth in a book. It's another to face it in a realm where illusion dissolves and your emotional energy shapes the walls around you. And this is where the real shift happens. When you stop seeing sleep as a break and start treating it as a training ground, your nights begin to change. You no longer dread the darkness or ignore the visions. You lean in. You become curious. You begin to understand that the realms you explore aren't just reflections, they're classrooms. This is the path Thoth laid out. Not escapism, but evolution. A nightly invitation to remember who you are beyond flesh, and to confront everything that still keeps you tethered. Not because you're being punished, but because you're being invited. Invited to rise, to refine, and to remember. Sleep, then, is not the end of the day. It's the beginning of another kind of journey.